You're losing 3% of value every year. It's the invisible tax on cash savings. Picture a woman who spent 30 years putting every spare dollar into a savings account. No stocks, no risk, just cash stacking up quietly. She felt responsible. She felt safe. But when she finally needed that money, it bought far less than she expected. That's not a rare story. It happens to careful savers everywhere, and almost nobody sees it coming. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly why pure cash savings quietly lose value, and the simple rule that keeps your money both safe and growing. First, we'll give cash its due credit, because it really does protect you in ways nothing else can. Then we'll expose the slow, invisible risk that eats away at cash the longer you hold too much of it. Here's a simple example. Imagine $10,000 sitting untouched in a drawer for 20 years. The number on the bill never changes, but what that money can actually buy shrinks the entire time, quietly, year after year. The mistake almost never happens on day one. It happens years later when someone never revisits how much cash is enough and keeps piling up more out of pure fear. We'll come back to the fix at the end. Let's start with what cash gets right, because it earns its place. Cash is instant. No waiting, no selling, no explaining. When life throws an emergency at you, cash is the only asset that shows up immediately. Think of a sudden car repair or an unexpected medical bill. In that moment, nobody wants to sell an asset at a bad time just to cover the cost. Cash sitting ready is what actually saves the day. Cash also protects your mind. When markets swing wildly, people with a solid cash cushion sleep better. They don't panic sell their investments at the worst possible moment, because they aren't relying on those investments to survive the week. And held in an insured bank account, cash doesn't crash overnight. No dramatic headlines, no sudden 50% drop. For short-term safety, nothing else feels quite as steady. So cash is a genuine tool. It's your buffer, your emergency reserve, your peace of mind fund. The problem was never that people hold cash. The problem is what happens when cash becomes the entire plan. Because that same safe, steady feeling is exactly what quietly costs long-term savers the most money. Most people never notice it happening, because it never feels like a mistake until decades have already quietly passed by. Here's the risk nobody warns you about. It's not a crash, it's a leak. Every single day, prices for everyday things drift a little higher, and the same pile of cash buys a little less than it did before. Picture a basket of everyday groceries, a simple set of basics that families buy every week. Over enough years, that same basket costs noticeably more, while the cash set aside to cover it hasn't grown by a single dollar. It's like burying a jar of coins in the backyard and digging it up decades later. The coins are all still there, but the world around them has moved on, and that jar buys a fraction of what it once did. Think about someone who spends an entire working life keeping every dollar of savings in cash, avoiding anything that felt like risk. By the time retirement arrives, that pile of cash can quietly cover far less of daily life than it once could. Now, compare that to someone who kept a healthy cash cushion, but let the rest of their savings sit in assets that tend to grow alongside the wider economy over time. Their spending power holds up far better, decade after decade. That's the trap. Cash never sends a warning. There's no red alert, no scary headline, no single bad day. Just a slow, quiet drift that's almost impossible to feel while it's happening. Our brains make it worse. We look at the number printed on a bank statement and assume safety because the number never goes down. But the number was never the point. What that number can buy is the real story. This is exactly why how much cash you hold matters far more than most people ever think about. A little cash protects you. Too much cash, held for too long, quietly works against you. So how much cash is actually the right amount? There's a simple number most financially secure people use, and once you hear it, your whole approach to saving changes. Before we get there, if you want more straightforward ways to protect what you've built without falling for hype, subscribe. This channel breaks down exactly that, one practical idea at a time. Here's the turn. Cash was never the enemy. Hoarding cash was. The amount you hold and how long you let it pile up untouched is what quietly decides whether it protects you or slowly costs you. A healthy starting point is simple. Keep 3 to 6 months of your everyday expenses in cash you can reach immediately. That single cushion covers almost every real emergency life throws at you. Beyond that cushion, extra cash sitting idle for years stops being a safety net and starts being a slow cost. Money beyond your emergency buffer works harder when it's placed somewhere built to keep pace with rising prices over time. Picture someone who finally set that boundary. They kept a firm cash cushion for true emergencies, then redirected everything extra toward long-term growth. Years later, their buffer still covers surprises, and the rest of their savings kept pace with the rising cost of living. That's the mistake from the very start of this video. It was never about being careless. It was about never setting a limit and letting fear quietly turn a smart safety net into the biggest drag on real wealth. So remember it simply. Cash protects you today, covering the emergencies life throws your way. Growth-minded assets protect your tomorrow, keeping pace with rising costs. You need both, and neither one alone does the whole job. Now you can actually run the numbers yourself. Add up your monthly expenses, multiply by 3 to 6, and that's your cash target. Everything saved beyond that number deserves a better long-term job. This week, go check your own cash balance against that number. Are you a hoarder sitting on far too much, or an investor with a purposeful cushion? Answer that honestly, and you already know your very next move. Because protecting what you've built was never about avoiding every risk. It's about understanding exactly which risks are actually hiding in the choices that feel the safest.